And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have everybody here on this Tuesday, December 19th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And as always, is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show by talking about the Seattle Seahawks upsetting the Philadelphia Eagles last night 20-17. So we'll get into that in a second. Then, in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield's performance against the Packers over the weekend on Sunday. He is the first opposing quarterback to have a perfect passer rating in Lambeau Field. So we'll get into that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll go over the Saturday triple-header. We'll talk about what happened in those games, because I know I really didn't touch upon them at all yesterday, because obviously we went through individual games. And then in the final part of the show, we'll go through the current standings and where everything stands after Week 15. So that's what's on tap for today. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about last night's game between the Eagles and the Seahawks. So, the Eagles obviously losing their previous two games to the 49ers and the Cowboys, and the Seahawks, they were on a 4-game losing streak as well. So both teams, and I said this yesterday, really needed to win this game. There was no Geno Smith in this game. He actually was active, I believe, but, dealing with the groin injury, but he ultimately didn't play. It was Drew Lock who got the start, and there was also some questions on whether or not Jalen Hurts was going to play in this game too, because he wasn't feeling well. He had an illness that got worse, but he still gutted it out and played in this game, because if it wasn't going to be him, it was going to be Marcus Mariota that was going to get the start. So how the game started off, the Eagles, what a great drive to start the game. They went 15 plays, 75 yards, 8.5 minutes of time of possession. This is to open up the game. Down the field, and Jalen Hurts from 3 yards out scores a touchdown. Obviously, this wasn't a tush push. This was, he was dropping back to throw, and then he was able to, scramble and score from 3 yards out. So that put them up 7-0. Then both teams traded punts, and that was how the first quarter went. Then the Eagles went 16 plays, 63 yards. Again, almost 8.5 minutes of time of possession once again to kick a field goal. And that was a Jake Elliott field goal from 27 yards out. Then the Seahawks answered with a nice drive of their own to get a field goal, 12 plays, 67 yards. 4 minutes, 38 seconds of time of possession. Jason Myers from 26 yards out kicked the field goal. Both teams again punted. Then the Seahawks opened up the third quarter with a 9-play, 75-yard drive. 4 minutes, 55 seconds of time of possession. Kenneth Walker from 23 yards out. Great blocking on that play. Drew Lock was leading the way along with Colby Parkinson. It was a great run by Walker, who had a good game. So he scored a touchdown. So that tied the game. And I even said it as I was watching the game. I'm like, the Eagles are going to go right down the field and score a touchdown. And that's exactly what happened. 12 plays, 75 yards, 5 minutes, 22 seconds of time of possession. They went down the field. And the tush push, Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. So that put them up 17-10. Both teams then traded punts. And then for the fourth quarter, the Seahawks, they went 11 plays, 45 yards, 6 minutes, 26 seconds of time of possession down the field. Jason Myers from 43 yards out kicked the field goal, so it was 17-13. Then the Eagles, their drive lasted 4 plays, 30 yards, as Jalen Hurts threw a pick to Julian Love. Now, there was some controversy on that, because you could clearly see Julian Love grabbing the jersey of Quez Watkins, and the refs didn't call it. That probably should have been a flag, at least a holding. I don't know about pass interference, but that should have been at least a holding. But the refs let it go, the Seahawks didn't turn it into points or anything, so it didn't really matter. But that would have gave the Eagles a first down, and they probably maybe get points out of that. But yeah, the Seahawks punted, then the Eagles punted, and then the Seahawks minute and 24 seconds of time of possession go down the field. 10 plays, 92 yards. Drew Lock connected with DK Metcalf for 18 yards. Then he connected it with him for 34 yards, and he just threw it up. And there were two guys there on the Eagles right there, but DK was able to haul it in, and that set the Seahawks up. And then Drew Lock on 3rd down and 10 from the Eagles 29 connected with Jackson Smith-Njigba, the rookie, for a 29-yard touchdown. That put them up 20-17. And then Jalen Hurts threw a pick to Julian Love, which got reviewed. And I don't know why, on ESPN, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman weren't sure if he got both feet down. Well, Troy Aikman wasn't sure. But I was like, he clearly got in, looking at the replay. So I don't know. But yeah, he got in. They ruled it an interception. And the Seahawks, they pick up the win 20-17 in an upset. And the Eagles now have lost 3 in a row. And they're still technically the 5th seed now in the NFC. Cowboys, are fortunate for them that they lost, obviously, on Sunday. So they keep the division lead. But Eagles right now have lost 3 in a row. You look at the stats for the game. Jalen Hurts went 17 of 31, 143 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was their leading rusher. He had 82 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. DeAndre Swift had 18 carries for 74 yards. Kenneth Gainwell had 6 for 21. A.J. Brown was their leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 56 yards. Devontae Smith had 50. Dallas Goedert had 30. DeAndre Swift, he had 2 receptions for 1 yard. It just it wasn't a good performance by the Eagles offense once again. They got 2 sacks in the game on defense. And then as for the Seahawks, Drew Lock went 22 of 33, 208 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Kenneth Walker had 86 yards rushing and a touchdown. DK Metcalf had 5 for 78. Jackson Smith-Njigba had 4 for 48 and a touchdown. Kenneth Walker had 3 for 26. Tyler Lockett 3 for 21. But yeah, the Seahawks, they get back to 7-7. That's a huge win for them because they were kind of reeling and it looked like they were kind of fall out of this thing. But now they're 7-7. They're tied with the Vikings, the Rams, and the Saints, record-wise. So next week's a big week for those teams. Actually, the Rams and the Saints play each other on Thursday, so that's a huge game. But that was an unexpected win by them. The fact that they were able to go 92 yards, in about a minute and a half, and ultimately win the game with Drew Lock, that was unbelievable. And he was, I liked what he said at the end of the game, because he was, and they talked about this on the post game on ESPN. Is he was kind of looked at as the guy to be the starter going forward when they traded him in the Russell Wilson deal, and Geno Smith kind of beat him out for the starting job. And, he's kind of been the backup. And now he's seeing his first game action in quite some time. He started last week against the 49ers. And, he had to start again because, Geno still wasn't healthy enough to play. And, he did okay, and he actually did almost throw, a pick a couple times, especially on the last drive because that got hit up in the air and it looked like, someone was going to come down with it, but nobody was able to on the Eagles. Especially on that last drive. They threw to their playmakers. You're throwing it up to DK Metcalf, and he was able to haul in that big 34-yard pass. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba, scored the touchdown. Kenneth Walker made some plays, obviously. The rushing touchdown. And the Seahawks are missing some of their guys. The rookie Witherspoon was out. Obviously, Geno Smith being out. No Jamal Adams, but I think Seattle fans are happy about that. That trade really didn't work out for them. But, the Seahawks are 7-7, so they're still in this thing. And then as for the Eagles, you could look at, Jalen Hurts, not being 100%. Still getting over his illness. But the defense, on that last drive, they let the Seahawks go right down the field. And, they were missing some guys as well on the defensive side of the ball. Darius Slay obviously was not playing in this game. I did switch to the Seahawks taking the points And I honestly, thought the Eagles were going to, win and cover because, once it was 17-13, minute and a half left, I was like, or so, I was like, yeah, I mean, Seattle's not going to go down the field. And they did. They did. You got to give them credit. Um, that's a huge win for them. So, we'll see what happens going forward. As for the Eagles, the next time they play is on Christmas. They play the Giants, which, I know some people are probably like, the Giants could, maybe keep it close. The Eagles don't look good. I'm not buying into that. I'm not buying into that. Now, because of me saying that, that means you should, because whatever that. Well, I shouldn't say that because last night I took Seattle and they not only covered, they flat out won the game. So, got my typical 7-8 wins in the spread pool. Well, I got 8 this week, so that was good. But I think the Eagles, they got a soft finish to their schedule. I mean, they should sweep the Giants, and they also play the Cardinals in between that. Which, listen, Kyler Murray, James Conner, even though they're a really bad team, they could maybe put up some points, especially with how the defense for the Eagles has been playing. But I mean, I there's no reason the Eagles shouldn't win their final 3 games and get the division. Because again, all they got to do is win out. You play the Giants twice, who you always beat, and you play the Cardinals, who aren't a good team this year. I mean, there's no and that's a home game. So there's back-to-back home games, and then you play the Giants in the Meadowlands. So there's no reason why the Eagles shouldn't win those last 3 games. And if they don't, well, then they really got some problems. But, and I mean, you could just point at Hurts not feeling good, and, the defense. Obviously they gave, Matt Patricia the defensive play calling duties, so he's the new defensive coordinator. But in that last drive, it just didn't really matter. I mean, Drew Lock, he let him go 92 yards down the field, and Seattle picked up a big win. So, again, the Eagles, they're still in control of their own destiny. If they can just win out, they'll win the division. But it's not good. Not good what happened. What's going on with them? I mean, now they've lost 3 in a row. They've lost 3 in a row now. And they're fortunate that they beat the Chiefs and the Bills. Because could you imagine if they lost those games? Because they very could have easily lost those games. They were down by 10, but they were able to come back. Because, I mean, you lose one of those 2 games, I mean, then it's just, it's even worse. So they're fortunate they won those games. But, yeah, I mean, they're fortunate that the hard part of that gauntlet of a schedule is over now. Now they got the softer part of their schedule to finish off the year. Anything less than 3-0 is a disappointment. Sorry, it just is. You're playing 2 last place teams right now. Well, not the Giants. The Commanders are in last place, but still, like, bottom of the league teams. So there's no reason why you shouldn't win those games. So we'll see what happens, but big win for Seattle, bad loss for the Eagles. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield and his performance against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. As the Bucs now, they are in sole possession of the NFC South. So we'll talk about that as well when we come back from our first break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.